The story begins inside a prison called the Shawshank Grade Mission, known as the most secure penitentiary in the entire world. It holds thousands of inmates, yet not a single prisoner has ever managed to escape, simply because the security there is extremely strict. Some inmates have spent their entire lives inside those walls without even entertaining the idea of escaping, since anyone who attempts it is immediately sentenced to death. The scene cuts quickly to a courtroom, where a man named Andy, once a high-ranking bank manager in America, is being sentenced to life in prison for allegedly murdering his wife and her lover. Andy keeps repeating that he did not commit the crime, but he has no evidence to prove his innocence. This lack of proof leads the judge to send him to a life sentence in the most fortified prison in the world. Andy arrives with a group of new inmates, and as soon as they enter, the older prisoners begin betting among themselves on who will be the first newcomer to cry that night, gambling entire packs of cigarettes. Red, a longtime inmate, places his bet on Andy, believing he looks too gentle and too privileged to handle prison life. Later, all the inmates are locked in their cells for their first night. As darkness falls, the veterans begin yelling loudly to scare the newcomers, pushing them to break down, and indeed, one of the new prisoners starts sobbing hysterically, begging to go home. The guards rush and drag him out and beat him so brutally that he loses consciousness. Red realizes he has lost the bet. Andy didn't make a sound the entire night, proving he is much stronger than he looks. The next morning, Andy quietly eats breakfast alone, where he meets Brooks, the oldest inmate in the prison, who has already spent 50 years behind bars. Andy cleverly tries to learn every rule, big and small, and asks Brooks about everyone inside Shawshank. Brooks tells him everything and adds that if he ever wants anything from the outside world, he should talk to Red. Andy immediately approaches Red and says he heard he could get things from the outside. Red agrees but warns that whatever Andy asks for must not be used to escape or harm anyone. Andy surprises him by asking for a rock hammer. Red is shocked and asks if he plans to kill someone, but Andy calmly replies that he has no enemies yet. Red points at a few dangerous inmates and warns him that enemies can appear very quickly in Shawshank. The next day, Red brings Andy the rock hammer and laughs when he sees how tiny it is, thinking it would take 600 years to dig a tunnel with that thing. He sends the hammer to Andy through Brooks. Time passes. Andy works in the laundry, and soon the three inmates Red warned him about cornering him. Andy fights back but cannot defend himself against all three. They beat him badly and assault him, something that continues for 2 full years. One day, the prison announces that volunteers are needed to repair the roof. Andy and Red both join the group under the supervision of a harsh guard named Hadley, who is known for beating inmates senselessly for the smallest mistake. While they are working, Hadley complains that his brother died and left him $35,000, but the government will take most of it as taxes. Andy, being an expert banker, jumps in and asks Hadley if he trusts his wife. Hadley nearly throws him off the roof, but Andy quickly explains a legal trick. If Hadley gifts the money to his wife, he will pay 0 taxes, as the law allows tax-free spousal gifts up to $50,000. Andy offers to handle the paperwork for free. Impressed, Hadley agrees, and in return Andy only asks for some beers for him and the other inmates. The next day, all the prisoners sit on the roof drinking cold beer, something nearly impossible inside Shawshank, while Andy sits alone in a corner, simply happy to see them enjoying this brief taste of freedom. As time passes, Andy and Red's friendship grows stronger. One day, while all the inmates are watching a movie starring Rita Hayworth, Andy asks Red for a large poster of her. Red, being the only man who can get anything from the outside, agrees. The same gang of predators who had assaulted Andy before confront him again, ordering him to follow them, but this time Andy refuses. When he resists, they grab him and try to force themselves on him by violence. Andy fights with everything he has, but because there are 3, they overpower him and beat him brutally. The only difference this time is that they fail to do anything else to him, yet the beating is so severe that Andy ends up in the infirmary for an entire month. As for the man who assaulted Andy, he is thrown into solitary confinement for a week. A week later, when the attacker returns to his cell, he finds the guard whose taxes Andy helped avoid, the $35,000 inheritance waiting for him. Someone has told the guard how badly the inmate beat Andy, leaving him hospitalized for a month. Now the time for revenge has come. The guard unleashes a savage beating so violent it leaves the man permanently paralyzed. A month later, Andy returns to his cell and finds a large poster of Rita Hayworth hanging on the wall, a welcome gift from Red. Time passes until one day the warden arrives with several guards and orders a full inspection of Andy's cell. After checking everything and finding nothing suspicious, the warden's eyes stop on the poster. He tells Andy that posters are normally not allowed in cells, but this one can stay because the guard whose taxes Andy handled has already told him how Andy managed to save him. That is why the warden wants to meet Andy, because he intends to make use of him. Andy is holding a book, and the warden takes it as he leaves, only to return moments later. He hands the book back to Andy and whispers, "Salvation lies within." The next day, the warden calls Andy to his office and tells him that a smart man like him shouldn't be wasting away behind bars. From that day on, the warden appoints Andy as the assistant to the prison librarian, the old man Brooks, who has run the library for decades. The guard Andy helped recruit another guard for Andy as well, this one struggling with his tax forms, which Andy completes in mere minutes. Word spreads quickly and Andy becomes the talk of the whole prison. Years pass, Andy's workload increases and he needs help. He brings in his closest friend Red to assist him in the library. One day, Brooks suddenly grabs a knife and presses it to another inmate's throat, threatening to kill him for no reason. It turns out the government has decided to release Brooks, but Brooks doesn't want to leave. He has spent 50 years in Shawshank, his entire life trapped behind its walls, and he no longer remembers what life outside looks like. Shawshank has become his real home. Brooks believes that if he kills someone, the authorities will increase his sentence and allow him to stay. But Andy manages to calm him down and Brooks releases the man. Brooks leaves the prison against his will and finds the outside world terrifying. Everything has changed. The slow-paced streets he remembers now swarm with cars, noise and chaos. After a few days, Brooks works at a supermarket, but he can't stand life on the outside. He spends all his time thinking about prison and wanting to return. He considers committing a crime just to get locked up again, but he is too old and broken to harm anyone. Unable to adapt, Brooks takes his own life. Before he dies, he leaves a letter for his friends in Shawshank, and every inmate is devastated when they read it. Meanwhile, the warden launches a new program sending inmates outside the prison to work, supposedly to teach them the value of hard labor, and the prisoners agree since it allows them a chance to breathe fresh air. But the real reason behind the program is money. The warden takes massive payments from contractors because the prisoners work for almost nothing, undercutting free labor. Construction workers outside lose their jobs because the warden offers half-price labor through prisoner crews. The warden profits immensely, and Andy, being an expert banker, launders his dirty money and turns it into clean funds. He deposits the money under the name of a completely fake person, someone who does not exist. So if the police ever investigate, they will spend their time searching for a man who was never born. Around this time, a new inmate named Tommy arrives. Young but already familiar with several prisons, Tommy is friendly and quickly becomes popular with the other inmates. During a meal, Tommy admits he has spent years stealing, which led to multiple imprisonments and has landed him in Shawshank now for another theft. Andy hears this and tells him that if he keeps getting caught stealing, then crime clearly isn't the line of work for him, that he should quit before crime quits him. Tommy grows curious about Andy and asks Red about him. Red explains that Andy was once a top bank manager but was sentenced to life for killing his wife and her lover. Tommy falls silent, as if remembering something. He calls Andy and Red over and tells them a story. 4 years earlier, he was incarcerated in another prison, where he met a cellmate who confessed that one night he broke into a home to steal, got caught by the owner, and killed both the man and the woman. Later, he discovered the victims were not married, they were lovers, and the woman was the wife of a high-ranking bank manager. Tommy continues, months later, he read in the newspaper that police suspected the bank manager of the murders, arrested him, and charged him with killing his wife and her lover. Andy suddenly realizes he has found the truth at last, and he rushes to the warden to explain everything. But the warden, corrupt to the core, refuses to believe him, not because he doubts Andy's innocence, but because Andy is the only one who knows how to launder his illegal money. If Andy is released, the warden loses his profits and risks exposure. Andy promises the warden that if he is freed, he will keep the warden's secrets, but the warden rejects the plea entirely. Andy snaps, furious that after all the help he has given, the warden is refusing to acknowledge the truth. For that moment of defiance, the warden throws Andy into solitary confinement for a month. The warden immediately summons Tommy and asks him directly whether the story he told Andy is true. Tommy replies without hesitation, yes, it's 100% true. The warden then asks if he would testify in court should they need him, and Tommy proudly says yes, he's ready. The moment he says that, the warden signals one of the guards, who pulls out his gun and shoots Tommy multiple times until he collapses dead on the ground. Afterward, the warden goes to Andy and coldly explains that Tommy tried to escape, which is why they had no choice but to shoot him. But Andy instantly understands what really happened. He sees clearly now that the warden is a truly vile man. Andy tells the warden that starting today he will no longer work for him, but the warden replies with a threat. He will work or Shawshank will become a living hell for him. As he leaves, the warden tells the guards to lock Andy up again and throw him into solitary confinement for another month. The solitary cell is a terrifying place where inmates spend an entire month in darkness. Andy endures 1 month and must now endure another. Word spreads quickly throughout the prison that Andy is being punished for a crime he didn't commit, and all the inmates feel devastated for him. After 2 grueling months in darkness, Andy finally emerges. Red visits him immediately. Andy asks if Red thinks he'll ever get out of Shawshank one day. Red says yes, but only when he's very old and too worn out to enjoy freedom. Andy then tells him that he will get out, and when he does he will go to Mexico to a beautiful place by the ocean where a man can forget his past. Andy says he'll open a small hotel there and repair his boat on the beach, and he'll need someone to bring him supplies. Andy is clearly hinting at Red, but Red warns him that hope is dangerous. It can drive a man insane. Mexico is far, far away. Red tries to walk away, but before he leaves Andy stops him and asks for one promise. If Red ever gets out he must do Andy one favor. Red agrees. Andy then describes a very specific place, a wide open field with a big tree. He tells Red that under that tree is a stone wall with one particular black stone. Under that stone, Andy has hidden a box. One day, when Red is free he must go there and find out what's inside. That night, Andy finishes all the warden's paperwork, files it neatly in the warden's secret safe, and the warden hands Andy his suit and tells him to fold it, shine his shoes until they look like mirrors, and put everything away. Andy returns to his cell quietly. On the other side of the prison, Red lies awake the entire night, terrified Andy might harm himself. Morning arrives. All cell doors open. The entire yard fills with inmates, except Andy. He does not step out of his cell, something that has never happened in 20 years. Red stares at Andy's cell in rising panic, fearing the worst. A guard angrily marches to Andy's door, opens it, then freezes in shock. Andy is gone. The warden, getting dressed, opens his shoebox and finds not his polished shoes but Andy's old prison shoes. Alarms scream across Shawshank. This is an escape alert. Guards rush to Andy's cell. The warden arrives moments later. He demands Red be brought to him. Standing in front of Andy's empty cell, the warden angrily asks Red where Andy is. Red insists he has no idea. The warden, furious, grabs a rock and hurls it at the poster on Andy's wall, but the rock tears straight through it. Confused, the warden rips the poster aside, and behind it finds a massive tunnel carved straight through the stone wall. Everyone is stunned. This wall is supposed to be impenetrable, but Andy somehow dug a tunnel through it. The guards rush to the outside drainage area and find Andy's old clothes and the tiny rock hammer Red got for him 20 years ago. The same tiny hammer the warden once joked would take 600 years to carve through a wall, yet Andy spent 20 years digging patiently and quietly. The dirt he removed each day he scattered across the prison yard, hidden inside his pockets. On his final day working for the warden, Andy switched all the warden's important papers with the book he carried. He placed the warden's incriminating financial records into the safe, dressed himself in the warden's perfectly folded suit, polished shoes, and stepped into the night disguised as the very man who controlled him. Once the lights went out, he crawled through the tunnel, broke into a sewage pipe, and dragged himself through 200 meters of filth until he emerged free. The only man ever to escape the inescapable Shawshank. At sunrise, Andy walked into the bank where all the warden's laundered money was stored under the name of an imaginary man Andy created. With forged IDs he had prepared years earlier, he withdrew every last dollar, around $370,000. Andy wasn't just free, he was rich. Andy then mailed every bit of evidence exposing the warden's corruption to the newspapers. The next morning, headlines exploded everywhere. When the warden opened his safe, he found not his files but Andy's book, and on the first page the words, "You were right, salvation lies within." Inside, he finds the outline of Andy's rock hammer carved into the pages, revealing that Andy had been hiding the hammer right under his nose for 20 years. Police and reporters swarm the prison. Knowing he's finished, the warden locks himself in his office and shoots himself. Later, Red is paroled after 40 years. The government assigns him a job, but life outside feels unbearable. He lives in the same room where Brooks lived and even starts to feel the same despair. He nearly gives up, but remembers his promise to Andy. Red travels to the exact field Andy described. Under the big oak tree, he finds the black stone, lifts it, and uncovers the box. Inside is money and a letter from Andy saying he is waiting for Red in the place they always dreamed about. Andy's final words, "Hope is a beautiful thing." Red violates his parole and heads south. Eventually, he reaches the coast of Mexico, walks along the beach, and finally sees Andy fixing his boat under the sun. The same dream Andy shared all those years ago in a dark prison cell. The two friends embrace, reunited at last, and that's the end of the story.